Welcome to the Feed the Soul Company podcast, a space I've created to share my story and to encourage you to share yours. I'm your host, Liv Sedla, and I cannot thank you enough for being here. With me today, super special guest. You guys, when I say day one, this guy has been with me since day one. So I'm with my Tae Kwon Do instructor, Master Jones. He was my instructor at Soaring Tae Kwon Do, and I started when I was, I think, 3 years old. I think that was the age I started, super young, but finished by getting my black belt when I was 10. But more importantly, Master Jones has shaped who I am today, like so incredibly. Everything from my values, I think about my grit, my determination, perseverance, just all these values I have. It really does start with my parents sending me to Soaring Eagles Taekwondo. And of course, my mom and dad have shaped me into who I am, but Master Jones and what they teach at Soaring Eagles is phenomenal. So I brought him on here to share a little bit of what I learned, and I can't wait to have you guys meet him and learn a little bit about what I learned as a young kid. But Master Jones, thank you so much for being here.
Wow, I'm excited to be here with you today, Liv. You have no idea.
Yes. Starting off, can you introduce yourself to the podcast and tell them a little bit about who you are?
Sure. Yeah, my name is Wayne Jones. I'm from the Bay Area. I grew up in San Francisco, California. I'm a 60s boy, born in 1960, so I'll be 65 this year. Moving up there, I got to sign up for, what's it called, Medicare or something like that. I don't know. It's a government rule. Moved around a little bit after I married my bride of 39 years next month. But we ended up settling in, as we came back from Japan, in Vallejo, California. And that's where I met you and your family.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So just for the listeners, can you tell us a little bit more about your gym, Soaring Eagles?
Mm-hmm.
When did you start it? How did you get into Taekwondo, being an instructor? Tell us more about that.
Wow. Yeah, that's a great story. I was in college. I had just transferred from school in Arkansas. I was at a school called Southern Baptist, and I transferred back to San Francisco State University. Moved back in with my mom, so that's not why I'm not so angry at my children for still being at home. I was living at home, but I was going to college full time, working full time, and kind of like someone I was a basketball player at my previous college, and I thought that would continue when I transferred. But when I got there, that team was already pretty much settled. They didn't have much. They had some space for walk-ons, but they weren't offering anything to help out. And so I just decided, okay, I'm done with basketball for now. Switched to intramurals. I became an intramural basketball star. But I was still needing something to take the place of that drive that I had of being a college athlete. And my neighbor was coming home one day. He had his uniform on. We call it dobak in Taekwondo. And I asked him, I was like, where are you coming from? And he told me, oh, yeah, I just came from Taekwondo class. And I didn't even know what Taekwondo was. I grew up in the Bruce Lee era, so I knew what Kung Fu was. I knew what karate was. I was a big Bruce Lee fan in the 70s. I knew every word in all of his movies. I can recite them to you. So I went to watch his class, and I was right away. I was like, I'm doing this. And I think I joined like the next day or the next week. And that was in October of 1980. I still remember, and I've been doing it ever since.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a pretty awesome story.
Yeah.
And
we're still good friends.
Oh yeah, for sure. Can you tell us more about, I guess I just want the listeners to know more about what you teach in your gym. What does that look like? And I guess I really brought you on here because I love how you go about training the mind, body, spirit all in one. Can you tell us more about what you teach in your gym?
Yeah, sure. Like I said, I grew up in the Bruce Lee era. So the main thing when people think about Bruce Lee is how good he could fight. But he also trained his mind. He was a great philosopher as well. And so in our school, don't get me wrong, my wife and I, and she's a sixth degree black belt. I'm a seventh. I almost said fifth. That'd have been bad. I'm a seventh degree black belt. But we both grew up fighting in the street. This was back before guns and knives were in fighting. We just street fighting. You got into it with your friends. Next day, your friends again, or the people in your neighborhood. So we grew up fighting. So we liked that part, the combat part, but as we matured in age, we understood how important it was to train the mind as well. And so with our students, especially our younger students, we emphasize for them, you have to do well, or at least do your best in school. Not everybody's on the same level, and we get that, but we encourage them. Every year we have something called academic superstars. So we just encourage them to do a little bit better, do a little bit better each year, and we reward them for that. We also encourage spiritual growth. Um, I know in a lot of martial arts, there's a lot of things called, like Buddhism and Confucianism and different things for different martial arts. We're Christians, and so our philosophy comes from the Bible. And although we don't preach sermons to our students, we do encourage them to look toward Scripture, look toward the Bible. So every now and then, and we have it on our wall, if you remember, Scripture about eagles and how our minds and our bodies and our spirits can be renewed. And so, but if we have opportunity, if people are going through rough times, we'll encourage them. Look to this source because this source can really help you and help feed your soul, like the name of your podcast, which I love.
Thank
So,
you.
mm-hmm.
I want to know more because as a young student, I remember preparing for my black belt test. And it was, yes, we had to remember certain kicks, we had to remember certain punches, we had to remember certain forms. But I also remember we had this packet and we had to fill out like acts of kindness. And so each year you got older, you had to fill out more acts of kindness. And then I remember having to do activities. Our binder, I still have my Tae Kwon Do binder in my home back in Michigan.
Yes.
in my duffel bag. I have the whole thing. My dough box. It's all still there. But I remember I remember looking through because we just moved in Michigan, so we had to go through our stuff, and I literally sat down and looked through my binder, and just seeing how I, as a probably like 6, 7, 8 year old, like defining what is indomitable spirit, all these different things, and now looking on the other side of it as someone who wants to teach young kids, young athletes, how this way of life of like more holistic, like it's more than just combat, it's more than just one thing.
Right.
How did you, I guess, what did you decide to go in that goes in these binders? How did you, like, I love the scripture part of it, all these different ways to guide young kids. How did you guys build this and put it together and, like, I guess bring this to kids and say, this is what we teach you, this is what we do? I want to know more about how you created it all.
Wow.
Yeah.
Great question. Our foundation, we trained at the same school. I got to interject this funny story. She'll probably look at me here. When I first started in 1980, I was very excited. My girlfriend at the time was going to Santa Barbara, UC Santa Barbara. So we were doing that long distance telephone. Neither one of us had any money, but our phone bill was $200, $300, so we had to stop doing that. So anyway, I call her and I say, guess what? I'm all excited. Guess what I'm doing now? I'm doing Tae Kwon Do. And she cracks up. And all I hear is laughter on the phone, right? How's she looking right now? Yeah. And so all I hear laughter. Now I'm shrinking in my seat. I'm like, wow, let the air out. And so anyway, that doesn't stop me though, because I'm already, this is what I'm going to do. And about 2 or 3 months later, she comes to visit for college days. Her mom still lived in the Bay Area. She comes to visit. She comes and watches one of my classes. And she's sitting over there just watching. We're out on the floor. And I look over about halfway through and she's down on the floor and she's stretching and like she's getting limber, like she's about to join the class. 6 months after that, she relocates to the school I'm at, San Francisco State, and she joins the program. So right away now, we're on a similar path, and so our first instructor, I don't know if you remember the names because that was part of the things you had to learn as far as lineage. At the time, he was Master Jerome Rittenback. He later became a Grandmaster. Our foundation that we use now came from there. And some of the things that are in that binder that you have were some of the original things we learned. The 5 tenets of Tae Kwon Do: courtesy, integrity, perseverance, self-control, indomitable spirit, which you and your sister, and TQ to an extent too, because he came a little later. But to get to black belt, you had to display all of those things, right? And so, got all that information from him. We moved away. We met another gentleman, Master James Wilson, who also later became a Grandmaster. And then I was a black belt when we moved away. She was close to it. He then added more to it. So we got more of the principles of Tae Kwon Do, which we didn't have before. sincerity, responsibility, justice, um, never treat retreating battle, always finish what you start. So some of those things came later. We added that. And then later on, we like the acts of kindness. We still do this. We go to different seminars. We understand that, yeah, we've been doing this for 44 years, but there's still some people who know more than we do. And so we do take advice from other people. And this gentleman told us one time that he does this thing called acts of kindness. We're like, oh, that's pretty cool. So if I do an act of kindness, that's impacting somebody. If she does it, maybe we impact 2 or 3 people. But if we have an army of people who are doing 25, 50, 100, 250 to get the black belt, acts of kindness, now a lot of people in the community and the community itself is being impacted. So we started doing that, and it continues now to this day. We'll never get away from that because we just want people to understand, live your life by doing something good for people. If you see a piece of paper on the ground, don't just step over it because you didn't do it. Go ahead and pick it up. That starts in the dojo. And for those who don't know, in Tae Kwon Do, the school is called the dojang or dojang, and karate they usually call it dojo. Boxing is a gym, so it's different terminologies. But that's kind of over the years, and we continue to add. I still have my original binder as well.
Oh, nice.
So I'm glad to hear you say that.
Yeah.
Not everybody can say that, but I'm glad to hear that.
I absolutely love that. I just think about, again, now that I'm being on this other side of it, wanting to teach young kids this way of life about, yeah, that's the right thing to do. You don't step over the piece of paper, you pick it up. And again, like my mom tells me, even like hard times, she's like, remember what Master Jones taught you, like, and down like back in the day when you were like back against the wall, like you remember at the end of the day, no matter where you go, no matter what happens, you remember the things that Master Jones has taught you. And I just love hearing this story of it, of how it all came together, and I love how you guys continue to share this with kids today. That kind of leads me to my next question, because I remember going through as a young kid, like, just enjoying it, honestly, like coming to class, like learning forms, sparring, sometimes having to take on my sister once or twice.
You guys were pretty rough too, man.
But just I want to talk about over the years, because now I'm about to graduate college, and kids now, I haven't been in the space where I can see the difference, because when I was a student at your dojang, I didn't have a phone. I didn't have any of that. Now, I guess, how has it changed since I've been there with new kids, and you're instilling these lessons, but are the kids different? What does it look like today?
I mean, it could be different if we allow it to be, but we try to stick to the traditions that were put in us by those 2 gentlemen and others. There's others now who, again, like I think I said that, who kind of feed into us even at this level. So we try to stick to some of those traditions. So, things like phones, we know that they're going to be playing with their video games, and sometimes we hear it from the parents, they don't want to come. Why not? What are they doing? Video games.
Oh, okay.
They want to play their games. They don't want to get outside. They don't want to come work out. So we understand that, because we have 6, and our oldest son, Joshua,
Yeah.
he's back now. He just moved home about a month ago. But the great thing about him, first thing he said was, I want to come down to the school. I want to help out if I can. We're like, what? You've been gone for like 10 years. And he's been down there every day and helping out. And he's encouraging me to get in the gym and work out more, because I had I don't know if you know, I had hip surgery a couple years ago.
I didn't.
So I actually had hip replacement.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's crazy. But it was like 3 years ago, and so it slowed down my working out and all that. But now I'm back in the gym with him, 3 days a week. So it's a good thing that he came. So, but we understand that COVID did a lot of damage, especially to the younger ones. They missed school for at least a year, and so our goal is, but we're not gonna slack off on you when you come into school, or when you're at school, wherever you are. We expect excellence. Brand new students are not going to be excellent yet. They're still trying to figure out, why are you yelling at me? Why do I have to stand at attention?
Why do I have to stand still?
Right. Because you're learning discipline. You're learning self-control. When that kid at school calls you a bad name, instead of punching them in the nose or throwing a fit or throwing a tantrum, you'll learn how, okay, it's not worth it. I can walk away and still have my mind together. So in that sense, we haven't changed much. I don't want to look at us as dinosaurs. We've changed in some areas, but in some other areas, we're not going to. Because again, going back to it, yeah, can we fight? Sure. Are we going to win all the tournaments? No, we got something to do. Did you ever compete in a tournament?
I did when it was one, and I
Okay.
remember it was the age group where we were super young, and we came home with these big trophies, like first,
Okay.
second place, but it was like second place out of two, and like we got to go home with these cool trophies, and I still have them at my house at home, but it got to say I competed, and I think Naya won in forms, or I don't remember the exact categories, but it was fun to compete, and so I understand.
But think, just you guys are very competitive.
Mhm.
Obviously,
Yeah.
play volleyball at college level, but it's a small percentage of students who like to go to tournaments, who like to compete against other schools. And so we don't force that. There are some schools that's all they do. And people can find those type of schools if they're looking for that. Our thing is, we want you to be more of a well-rounded, complete person. Yeah, you can get in the ring and do this as well, but what are you going to do outside the ring? Because typically, even for martial artists, you're probably not going to get attacked in your life, at least in the past. Who knows in the future? But every day, you need self-discipline. Every day you need self-control. In those senses, you're getting attacked every day, whether you're at school, on the job, married, whatever. Those attacks are coming at you, and you better have the foundation in the martial arts training to be able to overcome those attacks.
There's one thing that I think is super important. It's just being well-rounded, being holistic, being balanced, different areas of your life. And I talk about what I learned as a kid, and as you talk about each class or different things going on, I reflect on as being a kid. But I do know you also host adult classes. So we teach the youth, like teach kids, for me at least, this is what my experience was, like your foundation, starting off discipline. But for adults coming into your class, I assume it's a lot of the same values, traditions, but can you just tell us a little bit about that difference? Like kids versus adults coming into your class? Because let's say a new adult wanted to sign up for your class today. Tell them a little bit more about, I guess, your approach to things and what they're getting themselves into.
Right. I love teaching adults. I think I mentioned I was in college, so I was already 20 years old, just turned 20. So I was a quasi-adult. I was working, I was in school. My parents weren't telling me what to do anymore, but I wasn't totally on my own. When I moved to San Diego, I was. We had our first apartment. We had a child, a baby. But my instructor, I think he kind of knew we were struggling. Our marriage was struggling. I had a job. We were paying the bills, but we didn't know how to be married at that point, and we weren't going to church. I had no relationship with God at that point, and I was just kind of living on my own, trying to figure it out. Always trying to be that kind of person to figure it out. And this man, he kind of talked to me without necessarily, kind of like my philosophy now, without necessarily preaching to me, but he was just teaching me about life and respect. So even as an adult at that point, 27 years old, I wasn't respecting my wife. And so if I'm not respecting my wife, which is when the two are one, you'll find this out. How am I respecting myself? How am I respecting her parents? You're really not. So he taught me about respect. He taught me about honor. Again, these are things that adults, a lot of times they think they already know, but if they're not practicing it every day, they really don't know it. So when adults come in, and I was honored to have, because your parents put you guys in. I got a funny story about your dad too.
Ooh, please tell me.
But they put you guys in first, and then at some point they decided they're going to join my class.
Yeah.
And man, having Gina and Ted in class was so cool, so cool. I really enjoyed it. He told me one time, this was just a private conversation, me and him, because at that time you guys lived in Benicia. People who don't know, Benicia and Vallejo are neighboring cities, but they're different.
Very different.
and a lot of people who live in Benicia, don't go to Vallejo. They'd rather go across the bridge to Martinez or Concord to do things. A lot of people who live in Vallejo don't go to Benicia just for whatever reason. And we heard those stories when we first moved here. There were actually people said, you guys don't want to live in Benicia. They're like, huh? What? We didn't know anything. So we're just like, we ended up settling where we settled because we felt like it was the best place for our kids to have multicultural experiences. We
Mm-hmm.
wanted them to grow up around different people, different ethnic groups.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why we settled where we did. But anyway, your dad, he told me one time, and this, I think this might have been after he had started. He told me, initially, I don't remember, you might even know this. I don't remember who told him about us. I kind of think I know, but I'm not sure. But he was skeptical at first, just because of where we were located. We're kind of into what people would consider the hood, right? I'm not going to sugarcoat it. There's other places that people in nicer areas. Our school is not located there. It's not a hood to me. I grew up in the worst area, but some people would consider it that. But he told me that he was skeptical initially, but he came once, came twice, and just decided, that this was the place for his daughters. And men, I know you don't trust, because the same thing happened to me when we first moved to Vallejo. I looked at a couple different places to where to put my girls, because at the time, they were 8, 6, and 4, so at least the two oldest ones, and I didn't find anywhere that I thought. And one of the guys actually offered my wife a job being a teacher there. He didn't offer me one, but he's like, yeah, your wife could even come teach for us. I'm like, oh, okay, that's weird. But so I decided, well, you know what? I'm just going to teach him myself. And around the corner from where we are now is a rec center. I made a deal with the person who was in charge there, and she rented out a little room, not much bigger than this room right here. And we started off with 7 children, and 2 of them were our own children. And, that's how we got started. But I think with your dad, he trusted us with his prime possessions, his daughters. Later, TQ. He at the time TQ would just run around. He was
TQ was doing it.
Yeah, he was just running around having fun. But the fact that he said that to me, obviously, I don't know how long ago that was. I still remember it to this day, and it really touched my heart that he was willing to trust us in a place that he wasn't necessarily comfortable coming.
Mm-hmm.
With his 2 prized possessions, his daughters.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I want adults to know too. We're big on physical fitness, even though we still have to work to do it our own. But she's 62, I'm 64. We're not in our 30s anymore. We understand that. So I can't jump and kick the top of the bag like I used to. But if we can still help people be healthier as they mature in age, eat healthy, so we have to be examples of that. Exercise regularly, 2 or 3 times a week at least, a minimum. And then again, going back to the other part, the mental and the spiritual part of it, then I think we're doing a good thing in our community if we can do that. Adults.
Absolutely, absolutely. And
Yeah.
I love even what you just said, leading by example,
Right.
being walking examples of that. And I love the story about my dad. I love stories about my dad, so that touched my heart.
Yes.
And I remember we on the phone just connected before we set up this podcast episode, but I remember you mentioning that, and I told you, I remember being a student, and I remember we would, for black belt training, we would be running around the gym.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, vividly remember, running on, asphalt or just, some concrete, just, and not thinking anything of it, just being yeah, and then now looking back and think about, the area and different things, and it's I never thought twice about any of that. Obviously, you taught us be aware of your surroundings. Don't walk around with your hands in your pockets. Don't what's it called? Sagging your jeans. Don't have your butt out. Just the little things like that I remember. But
Right.
being not oblivious, but I also love how you brought up the cultural and diversity part of exposing your kids to different things. And that is something I have learned to appreciate so much. Going from California to Michigan to now Vegas, I didn't realize how big of a part it was for me to be around diversity and see different things. And being in Michigan, Northville, Michigan, the area I lived, it was a nicer area, but also not as diverse as the places I were in California or now in Vegas. So, and just for context, my dad's white, my mom's Filipino, and I grew up very American. So I guess this cultural thing for my family, we're not super traditional in the sense that my mom is a traditional Filipino or my dad is a traditional white guy. It's not traditional by any means, but being around culture and diversity is super important to me. and just seeing those different things. So I just liked how you touched on that, and like also being a part of your school allowed me to start that
Right.
for me, and just like I just always think about like, well, how, like, why am I the way I am today? And so much of it goes back to just Soaring Eagles Tae Kwon Do, like just my experience as a young kid, and so grateful and appreciative for all of it.
Going back to that, when we first started, I told you the original 7, right?
Mm-hmm.
They were kids from our church, our best friends, which is the guy. Is the funny story is the guy I told you about who came home. He was my next door neighbor.
Yes.
So was it 2 of his? Yeah, 2 of his daughters were part of our original 7. Three children from our church, and then our 2 daughters. So the original 7. So they all look like us, And so when we started, that's how our school was. The only people that brought their students to us were people who looked like us.
Yeah.
Same skin tone, same skin color, right? But if you look at our school now, you can see the diversity in our school. And no longer we consider, oh, that's the black people school. And it hasn't been that way for a long time. But just it's so cool now. And the dynamics of the city is changing too. But we have people not just in Vallejo. We have people that come from Fairfield. We have people that travel from across the bridge who come to our school. Vacaville. We have a student who used to live in Vallejo. They moved to Vacaville. They found a couple schools out in that area that didn't like it, so they drive all the way to Vallejo.
Wow.
That's about 30 miles. And so we have people who travel quite a distance. And so that's pretty cool.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That really is. We got to talking a lot about Soaring Eagles Tae Kwon Do, but bringing it back to you, I want to ask you, if I were to Google Master Wayne Jones, what's something that wouldn't come up but is important to you in your story?
Wouldn't come up. Wow. Well, if you just Google Wayne Jones, you're gonna get a whole lot of people that don't look like me, because that's a very I guess typical name. But if you do put Master, or if you put Tae Kwon Do, then obviously Soaring Eagles will pop up. What won't pop up? Before I went into, I'm sorry, after my training in martial arts, I spent 25 years in law enforcement. So, and what that did for me was it also added to what I had already learned in my martial arts training when we talked about self-defense and safety and helping people. I worked all kind of investigations where people had been abused or hurt. And so when I went to college, my goal was not to go into law enforcement. That kind of happened, and I don't even know how it happened. But the other thing it did for us, it took us to different places. It moved us to San Diego, which was important at the time. It got us out of the environment we were in where we both knew everybody, and put 2 young people in their, early 20s. I think I was 25, she was about 23, and moved us into an area where we didn't really know anybody. So we had to go meet people. My old instructor told me that he had a friend in San Diego. Go see him. Well, it took me 2 years. That was the only 2 years of my life in the last 44 years where I didn't train. For whatever reason, I told you, our life was rocky at that point. So I stayed out the dojo. I was lifting weights and I was running, playing basketball, my favorite sport. I was doing all that to avoid time with my wife. Dude, that was my escape from having to live up to what I had promised I was going to be, right? When you make that commitment, when you get married, this is for you guys, right?
Yeah, right.
When you make that commitment, it's for better or worse. You can't avoid by just going to the gym and hanging out. You can, but if you don't get that together, it's not going to last long. Which is why we have so much divorce in our country. It's sad, right? So thankfully, was able to overcome that. That job, took us around the world. We got to see different things that I had never been out of the country. I had been to Mexico, Tijuana, but that didn't really count.
Yeah.
It took us around the world. I got to go to the Philippines, Korea. She got to test for her black belt in Korea. Well, we went to the Kukiwon. It was so cold that they had the gym closed, but she got the opportunity to go there and got promoted there. We took the little ones there. So it just kind of opened up the world to a kid who had never had a passport prior to that. Grew up in San Francisco in a neighborhood that wasn't diverse. It was the typical African American neighborhood at that time. All the people who were there before, when I was 1 or 2 years old, they left. You heard a white flight, they got out of there. We stayed. And my mother was still living there until we moved her to Vallejo in 2003. So I guess that part of my life is not online, right? It was a dynamic time. One of the reasons they hired me on this job, you have to have a college degree to be a federal agent. And they had, they interview hundreds, if not thousands of people for not that many. But one of the guys later told me, and it wasn't, it wasn't affirmative action, it wasn't DI, all that kind of stuff. He said, we looked at your resume and we saw that you were a black belt. And we really wanted somebody who had that kind of skill set. And it wasn't too much longer that I had added additional duties. I became the firearms instructor, and I wasn't good with a gun. I didn't know anything about it. They had to teach me that. But they wanted me to be also a defensive tactics instructor, which I was good at. So they gave me additional training, and I did that for the next 24 years. Became the regional firearms instructor, the regional defensive tactics instructor, which I then carried. Once I retired, I carried that I still train people in weapons, firearms, another business we created. So
that's so cool.
Yeah, so although the firearms class might be online, but the other stuff is not really there. But yeah, that's kind of a long-winded answer to your question, I guess.
No, I love it. I love every single second of it. I think it's so amazing. I think there's so much. That's why I wanted you on here. There's so much I'm learning about you and your story. Because as a kid, it's like, yeah, Master Jones is my instructor. I see him at the dojang and that's it. But now I love getting to know more and also hoping that other people learn your story too. Because it's a pretty cool story in my opinion. Next question I have for you. Seen a lot of things in your life, done a lot of things. What are some challenges you face? You've mentioned some things here and there, but tell us maybe some challenges you faced and then how you overcame them.
Ooh, some challenges?
Just a couple.
Yeah, so I already mentioned early on in our marriage, we had some real challenges. But thank God, like I said, we met a gentleman who kind of gave us both instruction, but they kind of led us back to, this goes into the spiritual aspect. Mm-hmm. I do believe with my relationship with Christ, because I'm not just a church person who says, okay, you got to believe it about. I believe, remember those wristbands, WWJD, yes. What would Jesus do?
Yes.
I believe you literally have to live that out and walk that out if you want it to be impactful in your life. And so challenges that I've had, I've tried to respond mentally, okay, what does the Bible say about this? Well, how do I respond to this? One of the biggest ones and scariest was we were in Okinawa, so we're thousands of miles away from home. When I took this job, I didn't reveal my youthfulness, experimentation with marijuana. I hid that. And whenever you take a government position, especially as an agent, mm-hmm. you have to be totally honest with them.
Right.
Because now you're going out and investigating people and you're expecting those people to be honest, and you have to be able to testify in court and put your head on the Bible, swear, and all this stuff. So I wasn't totally honest. And 5 years later, so every 5 years, we had to renew I had a top secret clearance. We had to renew our top secret clearance. So now it's time for that. And again, we're not in San Diego. We're in Okinawa. We had just got there maybe 6 months early, and now it's time to renew my clearance. And they asked, I'm filling out the paperwork, and here's this question. It pops up again. I thought I was done with that. Have you ever used marijuana? I'm like, uh-oh. Because now I'm not the same person I was 5 years ago. Now I'm saying I'm a Christian and I follow what I just told you. I follow Jesus' teaching. One of the teachings is you don't lie. And, this is before I had students and was teaching them about integrity. Well, I actually had a few students, but talking about integrity and all that. So am I going to lie again because I have my wife and my 2 children overseas? They might fire me. And they're not going to send me home. I'm going to have to come up with the money to get us all back home mm-hmm. with nothing. Or, do I tell the truth? Or do I lie about it and just maintain the status what I am without maintaining integrity? So anyway, I prayed about that. We had discussions about it. And I decided, I'm going to trust that living this way is going to turn out right. And so I admitted what I did. And it was scary. It's probably the scariest I've ever actually been. And now that I think back on it, they made me take a polygraph to make sure. And I had never you know, sold, and I have friends who did, who actually, dealt drugs. I never did that, but I did use, and I didn't use all the time. So I think when I say experimental, that wasn't too far from the truth. But during partying and stuff like
Right.
that, it wasn't like I did it every day or like I was addicted or anything. But and I don't put people down who were and who have done those things, because now white collar people do that, right? Now
Right.
it's
Yeah,
now it's every day.
everybody, yeah.
Yeah. So, but going back to the scary part of it is I didn't know what was going to happen to me, and so I had to take a polygraph. Passed the polygraph, although he said you're kind of shaky on this question, but I passed the polygraph. So what ended up happening was, my special agent in charge, he's a SAC. He called me in his office, and he appreciated the fact that I was honest. It had to go all the way to headquarters, which was in Washington D.C. He appreciated the fact, but that I was going to get a letter put into my file for a whole year because I initially didn't tell the truth. And as long as there was not another issue or popped up during that year frame, they would get rid of the letter. And of course, there none, because I never had anything negative in my 25 years in my file. And so, um, story is, we dealt with it. I felt good that I was a person of integrity, and now I can tell the story without fear of any retribution or anything. But then I can't even explain to you how scared I was, and my faith was really tested. My trust was really tested. But now I can tell the story and tell people when you're going through it, you know, lean on this word of God right here, because it's real and it can see you through if you put your faith and trust in Him.
Okay, so I love this story, and thank you for sharing that with us because I have felt with my experience with college athletics, it's tested me a little bit.
Hmm.
Tested me in the ways like these people don't grow up with the discipline or the hard work or things that I have always felt, that I've always believed that if you work hard, good things will happen to you.
Mhm.
And if you be a good person, don't lie, don't, those types of things, good things will come. But then I felt like growing up, the world isn't that black and white. And obviously it's so true. Like, I learned politics in volleyball. Like, you have to be a favorite. You can't just you can't just work hard and good things happen. Like, there's a lot more that goes into it. And so hearing this story is like, I guess, reminding me in a way of like, stick to who you are, stick to your values, because I see so many athletes. Oh, they can stay up late, eat like crap, cheat on certain tests. They don't have to come into the gym extra time, skip corners, all these things, and they still look like they succeed. They get to play, they get to start, they get to do, they still succeed.
Mhm.
And it's like, that's always frustrated me because I've always been a person, and again, it goes back to you, like, don't cut corners, don't do these things, and like, live right, do the right thing. And I've always felt kind of burned by the fact that, oh, other people don't have to like I've joked with my teammates, like, I'm just gonna be a bad person now, like, because it seems like being a good person, like, being a good person doesn't work. I don't know what it is, but hearing
No,
this story
stick
is
to it.
like so frustrating. But just reminds me, like, no, like, it doesn't matter what. Okay, it looks like they're doing well. It looks like it's working for them, but always be good with, okay, I know why I'm doing this right, so I'm gonna be okay with that, even if it doesn't work out. Life isn't gonna always work out for me, but at least I know I'm living by who I am, who I want to be, not skipping corners to get this certain result. So I just like that story because that's a reminder for me, and I hope other people take that lesson too. But
Let me tell you real quick
yeah.
before you move on. Another similar thing. This will be a shorter one. Before I moved to Arkansas, grew up in San Francisco. I was at high school there. My 10th grade year, went out for the JV team, junior varsity team. And that school, we had, I don't know, probably 50, 60 guys who went out for the team. Um, and as the coach is whittling down, I think he got it down to maybe 12 or something like that. My name is on the list, so I made the team. But another guy who was a friend of mine, he got cut from the team, and he was a couple inches bigger than me, probably as good as me. In fact, he grew another 7 to 8 inches, and he actually made it to the NBA,
Oh wow.
which I didn't grow much from my sophomore year in high school. I'm still about the same size, but he didn't make the team because of his work ethic.
Mm.
Was he a good player? Yes. Did he go on to become a superstar? Even in San Francisco, that's not easy. He became a star, um, but because during the tryouts, he didn't give the effort. He ended up transferring to a different high school because I guess he was like devastated that he didn't make the team, and I probably understand why. But I was able to outwork him just by going harder, pushing harder, driving myself. Just letting the coach see who's willing to work harder at this and who's worth it. And we ended up winning the city championship. I still take pride in
Hey.
that. That was pretty cool. But yeah, work ethic is important. And some people, our grandchildren are now juniors. We talked about that. One is a wrestler. She's been to the state now 3 years in a row.
Wow.
Well, this will be the third year if she makes it this year. So we're hoping and praying. She's got this coming up in a couple of weeks, but she moved down in weight category. So it's been a little more challenging this year for her. She used to, when she was heavyweight, she was winning first place all the time. Now that she came down to 170, and the girls are faster, and so it's a little bit more challenging. She's still winning like second and third, but we're hoping she makes it to state again this year. And she wants to do it in college, so we'll see.
Ooh.
Yeah, and then our grandson, he's a football player. They won state last year, and as a sophomore, he was on the state championship team starting as a sophomore. So that's pretty cool.
That's awesome.
He was injured this year at the end of the year, so they didn't go to state. They were this close. But we kind of encouraged them that, yeah, you can just be good because you're athletic. You guys are black belts, so you're athletic anyway. Or you can do the right things. You can eat right, put the right fuel in your body. You can get the right amount of rest. And so you can just, instead of being an average good athlete, you can become, let your body do what it does by giving it the right things it needs. Now you could take it to another level, like the LeBrons and the Kobes
Right.
and the Michaels, who, not that they have to be at that level, but I'm just saying, treat your body properly
Right.
so that you can excel at a higher level instead of staying up all night, partying, eating junk food, and just going off your pure athletic ability, because eventually that's going to wear out.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And going off of that, that's kind of why I've started Feed the Soul, because with my journey, I've learned these different areas will help you get that 1% better. Like, you can stay in the gym, get all the reps you want, work out as hard as you can, but then at some point you got to face the mental side, and confidence is a huge thing for young athletes, and for me too. But then you have to learn that side too, because you can rely on that athletic ability for so long, and then at some point, sometimes it's sooner for others, but you hit a roadblock and it's like, all right, there's other areas that I need to start working on. So that's why I've always loved the holistic view of it. I'd asked you the challenges question and how you overcame it. Is there anything else on that question you want to share or talk about?
Well, my wife reminded me of another challenge. Again, Okinawa. That was for marriage. That was our foundation. The first 2 years of marriage in San Diego, again, I already shared, it was horrible. The second two in San Diego, it got better because we started going to church. We started training together again, so it was getting better. The next 4 years in Okinawa was just foundational. We grew leaps and bounds, which prepared us to come back. We learned more about health. We read a book called, it was by one of the heirs to the Baskin and Robbins conglomerate. It wasn't What the Health. What was the name of that book? Anyway, it was about the meat industry. He exposed a lot, and so we started. Okay, we're cutting this out. We're cutting that out.
Yeah.
So anyway, we just started learning. Well, a issue happened over there. She just reminded me about, there was this mosquito incident that came out, and a lot of people were getting something called encephalitis, and they were saying how dangerous this was. It was dangerous to children, dangerous to adults. And they forced everybody over there in the military to get it. Now, they couldn't force civilians to get it at that time, but they encouraged us. But we just came together and we prayed about it. We were like, nah, we're not going to put that in our children at the time, or put it in ourselves. And we were fine. So was it scary? Yeah, because they made it real scary. But we decided we're not going to do it because we don't know what that is. We never even heard of that.
Yeah.
We never heard of that vaccine. Our children had been vaccinated early on, and we both were vaccinated. So we're not anti-vax, but we are
Just
skeptical.
yeah, just like, what am I putting in my body?
Exactly. That started then, and even now, and I'm not ashamed to say it, I didn't get the COVID vaccine. because I didn't like the way how it came out. A lot of people were like, "Well, you need to do this for the community," and that's fine. I think everybody who wanted it should have had access to it, but no, I don't believe people should have been forced to do it. That's just my opinion, and I'm not mad at people who think differently, but just understand I think differently too.
Yeah.
So, and we were fine. I caught COVID, and it was a pretty good cough, and it lasted for about 4 or 5 days. Why? Because we've done what we can to make our immune systems strong. We didn't have any comorbidities. A lot of people have those, diabetes and different things like that. But we try to do what we can to keep our bodies as healthy as we can. And so that was another scary time for us. But again, leaning on our faith, we were able to overcome that. So.
Love these stories. I love all the different aspects of it, and I love that just note you said, hey, this was my opinion, and I think that needs to be said more, but like, I'm not going to get mad at anybody else for a different opinion, but like, they need to respect my opinions different as well as theirs, and I think that's just a point. I wish more people had that thought, and I like how you said that, because we can share that with more people.
Yeah.
I want to talk more about a day in the life of an instructor. I want to tell people, what's it like owning a gym, being a teacher to kids and adults. Tell us about that. What does a day in the life look like for you?
Man, I'm so blessed that I have a wife and a business partner, because we're partners in our business. We're 50-50 in our corporation. We made it a corporation about 10 years ago. Before that, we were LLC, and before that, it was just a single owner, whatever. So one aspect of it, she's very good in. The other aspect, I'm pretty good in. And it's kind of funny because, she homeschooled all of our children. So she's a teacher at heart too. But when it comes to our business, she feels more comfortable running things behind the scenes. So she's the CFO, the COO. She's doing all those things to make sure that the school is not barely getting by like it was for many, many years. And I feel my comfort zone is on the floor, interacting with the students. I like everybody who comes into my atmosphere. I want everybody to feel good, because that's what my teachers did for me. They beat the heck out of us. And then at the end of class, big hug, bow, shake hands, love on you, whatever. I love you. And so I want all of my students to feel like they're important. And so we work well together. So a day in a life, in the morning, we might wake up and have a meeting over Zoom or something like that. That's not every day, but maybe once a week or so, with some kind of consultant firm or somebody who's trying to help us to get better. I'm the chief master grand, whatever they call me stuff, but I still clean toilets. At least once a week I go in, especially on Mondays, I go in and I do all the cleaning. I haven't grown too big to forget how to do that. People say all the time, you should hire somebody, and I could hire somebody and pay them to do all that, and maybe someday I will. But right now, I still, on Mondays, I'll go in early in the morning on Mondays, and I'll clean from top to bottom. Well, not really top to bottom. I'll make it look good on the surface.
Presentable.
Yeah. And I'll mop the floors, and do all that stuff. Now, Tuesday through Thursday, I'll let the other staff members do most of that, because I've done the basic part of it. But, I do that, and then I'm on the floor from 4 o'clock to 8 o'clock, either leading a class or assisting. I have some lower ranking, third degrees who are leading some classes. I'm giving them more and more as they mature and get better. And I'll assist them. I don't have too much pride I can't help out a lower ranking belt to get better. So, and then around 8:30ish, I'm ready to go home, and I go home, and first thing I try to do is unwind. I'll usually grab something to eat, a salad or something like that, or some soup, and I'll sit on the couch and I'll watch a game if a game is on, or I'll watch a podcast. I'll watch something. I hadn't been watching the news, but oh man, since the election, I've been watching the news again. She hates that when I watch the news, but that comes from my law enforcement days, because I always wanted to be up on current events. When 9/11 happened, I had no idea it happened. And my daughter, for whatever she's like, Dad, did you hear what happened in New York? I'm like, no, what? I'm getting ready for work. The towers got attacked. Like, what?
Oh my
And
gosh.
that, as you know, for everybody, it
Yeah,
changed everything. And
absolutely. Yeah.
especially for me, I was working for FEMA at the time. And so I had to, anyway, that's a different story. But that's pretty much a day in the life, now that I'm not working in the school district anymore. That's pretty much my days.
I like that. I like that a lot. And just as you bring up little things about, you and your marriage and then the business, that's like the world, or I'm looking up to you because as I get older, that's what I want to hope to be. Growing my business and then also my fiance. I want to I look up to you guys' marriage and leaning on that. And I'm just sitting here, just like taking everything in you're saying. Um, my next question, I guess, I don't want to wrap up just yet, but I want to ask. Obviously, that's whole part of my podcast. But given the day of the life, coming in the gym, cleaning, doing everything, even though you are the top, whatever title, but still doing the little things. I love that. And you mentioned going home, watching a game or whatever's on, but how do you feed your soul, Master Jones? How do you take care of yourself so that you can get up and pour into other people every single day?
Wow. Yeah, I mean that's a good subject. Yeah, the word, we call it the Word of God, but it's the Bible. Everybody out there and is familiar with what that is. That's my go-to. Um, I've been a church goer my whole life. My mother and my father, even though they divorced when I was about 2 or 3 years old. Um, when I was with her, Sunday mornings we're going to church, and sometimes with her it was all day long. So 10 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, then we're back there at 6 o'clock. That
Wow.
that was my mom, and so she made sure that I grew up knowing what the Bible meant, right? And with my dad, it was a little different. When I was with him, we went in the morning, but he wasn't going back, so it was only once a day. But even when I left San Francisco and I moved with him in Arkansas, I was 16 at the time, and I really didn't want to go to church. He still made me, and my dad wasn't this. Uh, Holy person, holier than thou. He had his things too. But on Sunday morning, he made me get up, go to church. So what did they do
Mm-hmm.
for me? They planted a seed. Parents can make you go to church when you're young, but they can't make you have a faith-filled life. They
Mm-hmm.
can't make you have a relationship with God when you get older. They can encourage it and they can pray for you, but they can't do it. But that planted a seed in me that later, when I was that lost person, and it's like everything, I got a job, I got a wife, I got a children, I'm pretty good shape, I look good, all that stuff. I can lift weights, I can play basketball, but why am I miserable? Now I need something that's missing. I got a
Mm-hmm.
college degree. Oh, I had three of them. Right. So I had all those things, right? But something was missing. It was huge. And I literally, there was some other things that I won't say right now, but it was some other things that happened that was like, man, um, maybe what my mom and dad was trying to teach me when I was young, maybe that stuff is real. And so I got on my knees and I was like, okay, God, they told me about you. When I was 9, I actually got baptized and said, I'm committed to you, but I didn't live a life committed to you. Um, what about this? Is this real? If you're real, help me now,
Yeah.
right? Help me get out of this madness that I feel like I'm in. And it wasn't much longer that I started seeing things begin to change in my life from that one prayer. Part of the prayer was I made a deal. You know how some people say they made a deal with the devil to do
Mm.
this. I
Mm-hmm.
made a deal with God, and I said, if you get me out of the situation, I will commit my life to you for the rest of my life. And He got me out of situations that I was in that I felt lost in, and I committed my life to Him for the rest of my life. And so, coming back to your question, when I feel like not when I feel like issues going on, but just on a daily basis, I turn to what I know best works. And for me, that's the scripture. I read Proverbs. There's 31 chapters in Proverbs, and I'll read one chapter a day just to start my day off. And then I'll read other scriptures that, just wherever I feel led to go to that time. And that'll help power me up for what's about to happen that day. So,
I love that answer. I think in terms of me and my journey, especially spiritually, I've went to Catholic school growing up, but then since going to college, I think I've just opened up my mind more. I never got confirmed in the Catholic Church. I was baptized when I was young, but I've opened my mind up more. I would say I'm agnostic, so I'm spiritual in a sense, but I haven't decided, oh, this is the one religion that I go by or I live by. Um, but I love how you speak about, oh, I read this scripture. And it's almost like I remind, like, people who have like a motivational quote or something, but I love how you have this like foundation of like, this is what I go back to. And then um, in terms of like feeding your soul and mental health, with my podcast, I've started this conversation of mental health. But having you on here, I want people to know it's not just mental health. People think, oh, let me just take a break on a day or be soft or just different things I think just get misconstrued. But I think mental health is also how you train like your brain in terms of mental toughness and also resiliency, and also it's your spirituality, like leaning on different things at different times. And I just love how you're an example of all these different things. And mental health isn't necessarily just I don't know, but I don't like how some people think, oh, like it's not being mentally tough
Right.
necessarily. But I just love all the different aspects in your story and just telling us different things and especially how you feed your soul. So
Yeah, it's funny. I told you she was a business administration major, accounting, all that kind of stuff. Like, I hated all that stuff. Uh, Whatever, go do your do. I was a psychology major. And we got made fun of a lot of times. People at psych major,
yeah.
But I really wanted to be a psychologist because when I was in high school, it's just funny how people would come to me and just pour out. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, maybe you should try. And I was like, dang, how did I come up with that? And so I really thought I could be a psychologist. But life happened. And so instead of going to grad school, I got a job. And I already talked about all that. But it's funny, now that we're in business, part of being a master instructor is you are a psychologist, you're a mental health counselor, physical health counselor, pastor, that's one of my titles too. You asked one of my titles. I'm associate pastor at our church. Both of us are. When you're a martial arts instructor, you're all those things to your students. And so did I go back and get my psychology degree? No, but every single day, somebody has some challenges that they're going through, and if we have a word that can help them, I'll share that with them, right? And mental health. So you talked about holistic. I use another word, and it's making its way out there, and I didn't make it up. It's what's being taught. It's foundational. So foundational health, which is, I'm sorry, not foundational, functional. Functional. I'm glad you corrected that. Functional health. And so instead of one thing being the problem, there's other things that's going on too. And if we can kind of figure out how to, which is what we're talking about the three elements, if we can figure out how to deal with the whole person, then we can help that person be more healthy, right? Both, not just physically, but mentally, and then most of all spiritually, right?
For sure.
So,
for sure.
Yeah,
functional health. As we wrap up here, I just wanted to ask you, is there anything else you want to share with the podcast, touch on, any advice to listeners in terms of functional health, or anything else you would like to share?
Wow. I know a lot of people, I try to stay out of the arguments on social media and all that, but I know a lot of people are scared right now. A lot of people are upset when they see what's going on. Some people are very excited about it. So everybody's coming from different angles right now. But again, going back to what we were saying earlier, I just encourage people, take care of yourself. The government is there for a reason, and they have certain things that they should do, but we really have a responsibility to take care of ourselves. I was for a certain aspect. I'm not a MAGA person, I'm not that, but I am a make America healthy again. To me, that's huge, and I hope I don't know if Robert Kennedy is going to be confirmed or not, but I hope that our government really takes it serious. They sound like they are, but I hope, in our country, you know, you and I probably can decide what we put in more so than somebody who's coming from a community where they only have a little store on the corner and it's full with junk food that's chemically laced with addictive substances in it. And you know, one of the things that I learned when I was working at the school, a lot of the children were coming to school with a bag of Takis and a soda, and that was their breakfast. And I was trying to encourage them and tell them, hey, this is not going to allow you to be able to function good in class. You're not going to be able to think well. I know you're right, but then they keep eating, right? And I do believe, again, like I said, personal responsibility, but I also think certain things in Europe, there's certain things that are not allowed in Europe and even in Canada that we have here, right? So on a minimum, our government can do some things to help our people become healthier, but then we need to do our best. And again, I'm preaching to the choir because you know you're an athlete, but even us, sometimes we just talking this morning about see how easy we had given up chips. One of my favorite thing was Doritos.
Love Doritos. Love Doritos.
And I would leave my job when I was working in school. I would leave the job and get a bag of Doritos and get a Celsius because for whatever reason I was thinking Celsius was better than Monster.
Yeah, the healthier energy drink. Yeah.
I don't know if I'm supposed to say names of those things on here.
No, it's
okay. But for me, I was thinking, hey, this is going to help me get through the next 4 hours because now I'm going to my next position, working 2 jobs in my 60s, right? But then I was like, as I started reading more books, we read a book called Good Energy. That's a book that kind of Stanford trained physician who switched from just everything she had learned in medical school after watching her mother die to what can I do to help people become more healthy. We read some other books too. I can't think of the names of them right now. That really kind of put me on a different path. Not perfect yet. I still got some work to do. But instead of being pre-diabetic, I want clean bill of health. Instead of having high blood pressure, which a lot of people I know at my age, I'll be 65 this year, are dealing with those things right now. And I don't want to deal with those issues. So I need to make changes still to this day. And then again, being that example to others. So I would just encourage people, watch what you're putting in your body. I don't drink soda anymore. That's one thing I did stop drinking totally. I used to love, Dr. Pepper. You said I could say it.
Yeah.
And it's nothing against Dr. Pepper, but it's just so much sugar in it and other chemicals in it. I couldn't keep doing that and say I want to be healthy. So now I just pretty much drink water with lemon, sometimes water with cucumber. I did have a glass of orange juice today, but it was freshly squeezed, so it wasn't concentrate at the restaurant where you just came from. Freshly squeezed is okay, but you just got to really, watch the amount of sugar that you put in your body because it's in everything. You got to be careful with that. And it's a lot of chemicals that are in our food and stuff we drink that don't even need to be there.
Right.
But they put in there for various reasons. I won't get into that right now.
Yeah,
but
that's another podcast episode.
That's another podcast. So just, being mindful of what you're putting in your body, because your body is just like a car. And if you put bad gas in your premium car, that car is going to start breaking down. But if you put in premium gas in your nice car, it's going to operate at an optimal level and for a long time, right? So that's critical. That's important. I think that we all take responsibility for our health and all function, like feed the soul, all functions of our health, mental, physical, and spiritual.
I seriously can't thank you enough for being here, honestly. That wraps up our episode with Master Jones. Again, I can't thank you enough for being here, and listeners, especially if you're here listening too, thank you so much for being here.
Can I say one more thing?
Absolutely, whatever you want to say.
Just a little something about Livy.
My gosh.
And her sister. She said she already told you guys that when they started, they were very young, I guess 3, 5, somewhere around that age.
Yeah.
But coming up the ranks, these two, and in my school, I mentioned earlier that we started it because we had our daughters. I wanted my daughters to learn because when Dad wasn't going to be there, and I know this is a real thing in your life.
Yes.
Real thing, right? When Dad wasn't going to be there, I wanted my girls to be able to protect themselves against predators or these guys who won't take no for an answer. I wanted them to be able to do it. And so watching you guys, when you were training, your dad and your mom would, and first they would sit in the back and just kind of watch. you, especially you, but Nia too, you guys were vicious. I mean, your energy level, and you were the loudest out of all the students. You were the most energetic, highly energetic, and I know you're listening too. And I'm trying to outdo you, but the little sister, she was just you had that fire that was just. Of course, you wish that all your students could be like that, but they're not. Some are very quiet and kind of barely giving you anything, and then there's some that's just over the top, loud energy, and who knows? Maybe someday, you'll be able to. You said you want to teach kids different things, but maybe someday you'll be able to show them some of what you learned, not just in volleyball, but in Taekwondo too.
Maybe I've gotten back into martial arts a little bit. I've picked up kickboxing. So doing that a little bit to stay in it. But if you meet me now, I think if someone were to meet me in college, I think they'd be surprised that I did Taekwondo, or and this is why I love the people, I love everybody and everyone I meet, but just the people who've really known me since I was a kid. And I think if you were to meet me now, I've not mellowed out, but I still have the same passion, same fire, same energy. But my mom's always taught me to keep it very I don't know, control it in a way, but
well, yes.
almost
Yes.
limit sometimes. And I'm not saying that was a bad thing, but I just feel sometimes in certain situations I feel I'm a listener. I'm gonna take a step back. But then with the people I'm with that I'm comfortable with, I'm gonna let it all out. I'm gonna be this fiery person. So just you bringing that up, I'm just that's really who I am. So
well, remember what Bruce Lee said about water.
Yeah.
Water, when it's just in a cup or in a lake, or it was just still,
Yeah.
very soft, very pliable, whatever. But when it's rushing, it'll destroy whatever's in its path. Houses, buildings, mountains. It'll destroy whatever it's coming into. And so that's really the essence of when we're just living our life. We need to be calm and just cool and collected. But when we have to defend ourselves or somebody else that we love or care about, now you're about to see something you don't want to see.
Right.
So.
Oh, I love that. That's a good reminder for me. I love that. And another fun little story I want to share with Taekwondo. I remember my dad started doing classes, and my mom, I think she did more of Muay Thai or kickboxing, or I don't know if she did.
They both got their yellow belts.
They did. They both got their yellow belts, and I remember, for one of the tests, I think I was getting my blue belt, and my dad was getting his yellow belt, and I remember us training for it, doing it together. And I was a kid at the time, and I remember he incented oh, if you do this, I'll get you whatever. but bigger picture, having my dad join me in what I was doing, and being a part of your school, and just us training for something, working on it together. I just and obviously he's not here anymore, but that's a core memory that I have, and you're a part of it. So I just wanted to share that with the listeners too.
That's awesome. Yeah, your dad was an awesome man. If anybody goes to, I know you said wrap it up a long time ago, but if anybody ever goes to our YouTube page, there's about 8 videos on there, actually 10, that he did. And, it's just me and him together in the back of the school, set up his makeshift studio, and we had fun doing it. And so my memories of him is just amazing.
I was just thinking about that. I was setting up my camera, setting this up. I was like, OMG, what kind of a full circle moment. My dad doing video it was the forms, so that we could, and this was computers were still kind of early, so we could go up on YouTube. If I wasn't in the gym, we could practice the forms at home. And so now being on this side of it, I'm oh my gosh, now I'm interviewing Master Jones on my podcast for my thing. So I just had a moment thinking about that. But full circle moment. Anything else before we wrap up?
I think that's it.
I love this so much. We hit on so much, and I'm just so excited to get this out there and for the listeners to listen to. I'm
just proud of you and your sister and your brother. He got a little time with us, but he was there.
Yeah.
Even when he was young, he was there running around and playing with the little basketball and all that stuff.
That's right.
And just what you guys have done in the face of losing your dad, who's a great man and probably had his flaws too, right? But he was a great father and husband, and losing him, the fact that you guys still went on and finished school. You didn't sit back and say, oh, woe is me. You kept pushing yourself. Indomitable spirit. that was a prime example of when we say indomitable spirit. Yeah, perseverance too, but in the face of just horrible situation, instead of giving up, I think you guys have made him really proud. I know you made your mom proud because every day she posts stuff about her girls
Check
and her
out her
son.
Facebook. Yeah.
Yeah. So I know Miss Gina is very proud of you, and so Mrs. Master Jones and I, and Miss Susan and all the other black girls who were before you, um, we're very proud of you too. My daughters, we're very proud of you too.
Oh, thank you.
All of you.
Thank you. It means a lot, really.
Mm.
Truly. Thank you, guys.